You there? The black girl in the back with the cheap uniform. Come up here now. Chase Hendricks's voice sliced through the Orpheum Theater like a blade designed to cut precisely where it hurts most. 500 guests turned in their seats. 2 million viewers watching the live stream held their breath. The spotlight found her immediately. 11 years old, hands trembling, white discount store blouse still crisp with that morning's iron marks. "I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean—" "Save it." He grabbed her shoulder, not gentle, dragged her into the spotlight's center. "Let's see if you can actually sing or if you're just taking up space." He snapped at his band. "Give her higher ground." The impossible note that made me $2 million. He leaned close, microphone off, but hers still on. Every word caught. "Fail quietly, kid." The audience held its breath. What she did next didn't just prove him wrong. It ended everything he'd built on lies. Comment where you're listening from. Subscribe to channel. 4 hours earlier, Zara Williams had stood in that same theater with her stomach tied in knots that wouldn't come undone. She lived in Compton with her mother and 2 younger brothers in a 2-bedroom apartment where the heater only worked in one room. Winter nights meant all 3 kids sleeping in the living room, huddled under every blanket they owned, while their mother worked the night shift at County General Hospital. Here's what nobody knew. Mini cliffhanger. Her mother was a nurse who'd dropped out of medical school when Zara's father died. Just disappeared one day when Zara was 3. Heart attack at 29, nobody saw it coming, left them with $17,000 in medical debt and no life insurance because they couldn't afford the premiums. Her mother had been 2 semesters from her MD. Now she made $30,000 a year, sleeping during the day in stolen 3-hour blocks, while Zara made mac and cheese for her brothers and helped them with homework. Money was always the question. Can we afford it? Not this month. Maybe next year. Maybe never. Zara had been singing since she was 5 years old, standing in the 2nd row of the New Hope Baptist Church choir every Sunday. By 7, her choir director, Ms. Johnson, had pulled her mother aside after service. "Your daughter has perfect pitch," Ms. Johnson had said, voice low like she was sharing a secret. "1 in 10,000 people can identify any note just by hearing it. She hears things the rest of us can't." Her mother had smiled, proud but tired, exhausted in that specific way that comes from working doubles and still falling behind on rent. "What do we do with that?" "Berkeley, Juilliard, professional training." Ms. Johnson paused, and in that pause was everything they both understood. "It costs money we don't have." So Zara sang at church. She sang in the school choir at Jefferson Elementary, where the music budget had been cut 3 years running, where they shared sheet music, and half the kids didn't have their own instruments. She sang in her room at night, quietly so she wouldn't wake her brothers, teaching herself runs from YouTube videos on her mother's old phone with the cracked screen. Her range was unusual. D3 chest voice to G6 whistle register. Those impossibly high notes that sounded like wind chimes in a storm. She didn't know this was rare. She just knew it felt right, like breathing but better. What happened next would change everything. When the letter came saying Jefferson Elementary had been selected for Chase Hendricks's charity gala, the whole school erupted. 20 choir students would perform as background vocals. Real stage, television cameras. Maybe, just maybe, a chance at something bigger. Zara's mother bought her a new white blouse from the discount store, tags still attached until that morning in case they needed to return it. $15 they couldn't spare, but her mother had insisted. "Baby, you deserve to look nice, just this once." Chase Hendricks was famous for these galas, one every year in a different city, raising money for underprivileged schools. That word always said with a certain tone, like it meant something more than just poor. He posed for photos with kids who looked like they needed saving. The press called him generous. His brand was built on being the voice of a generation. 4 platinum albums, 2 Grammys, endorsement deals with Pepsi and Nike that paid him more than most people made in a lifetime. And at the center of it all was that signature note, the whistle register C6 at the end of Higher Ground that no one else could hit. Except during soundcheck that afternoon, Zara had heard something that didn't make sense. The choir had been waiting backstage, instructed to stay quiet while Chase rehearsed. Zara had wandered near the wings, curious, wanting to see the stage where she'd be standing in just a few hours, and she'd heard him attempt the bridge of Higher Ground. He'd started strong. His voice was good, trained, polished, expensive sounding. The kind of voice you build with years of vocal coaching and studio time. But when he reached for that famous high note, something broke. His voice cracked around A5, 2 full steps below where it should have been. The sound was ugly, strained, human in a way that famous singers aren't supposed to be. He'd stopped, frustrated, snapped at his sound engineer. "Bring the track up higher on that section. I need more support." The engineer nodded, adjusted something on the board. When Chase sang it again, the note was perfect. Too perfect. It didn't sound like it was coming from his throat. It sounded like it was coming from the speakers. Zara stood there, confused. She had perfect pitch. She could hear the difference between a live voice and a recording. Could hear the slight digital shimmer, the way the note sat on top of the music instead of inside it, the way breath doesn't carry through speakers the same way it carries through air. That perfect C6 wasn't Chase Hendricks. It was a backing track. She'd gone back to the choir risers and said nothing. Who would believe an 11-year-old girl from Compton over a man who'd sold 4 million albums? But now, standing under the spotlight with his hand gripping her shoulder, with 2 million people watching and his whispered threat still ringing in her ears, Zara understood something else. He knew she'd heard him at soundcheck. This wasn't about giving her a moment to shine. This was about making sure no one would ever believe her if she told the truth. That was his first mistake. The band started playing. The opening chords of Higher Ground filled the theater. Zara's mouth went dry. "I don't think I can," she started. "Sure you can, sweetheart." Chase's voice was loud for the audience, dripping with false kindness. "Just follow the music." But Higher Ground wasn't easy. The verse sat comfortable enough, but the bridge climbed relentlessly toward that signature whistle register C6 that had made Chase Hendricks famous. The note Zara now knew he couldn't actually sing. Chase stepped back, giving her room to fail. "Whenever you're ready," he said, smile tight. Zara took a breath. Her grandmother's voice echoed from that morning before she'd left for the theater. "Baby, if someone tries to make you small, you stand tall." She opened her mouth to sing, but stopped. "Mr. Hendricks." Her voice was small, but the microphone carried it through the theater like a whisper in a cathedral. Chase's smile tightened. "Yes? Can you turn off the backing track, please?" The theater went silent. You could hear people shifting in their seats, confused murmurs rippling through the crowd. Chase blinked. "What? The backing track?" Zara's heart pounded so hard she thought everyone could hear it. "Can you turn it off? I want to sing it for real." The murmurs grew louder. Chase's smile froze on his face like ice forming over water. "The backing track is part of the arrangement, sweetheart." "But you sang it without the track at soundcheck," Zara said. "You sang it alone." The murmur became a wave. Chase's jaw tightened, muscles visible under his skin. "Soundcheck is different from performance." Then can you sing it first? The words came out before she could stop them. Show me how. Without the track? The question hung in the air like smoke that wouldn't clear. Chase stared at her. The audience stared. The cameras zoomed in. Somewhere in the control booth, a producer was probably losing their mind. Excuse me? I want to learn from you, Zara said, her voice still respectful but firm. Something was building in her chest, something that felt like courage or maybe just stubbornness. Sing it without the backing track so I can hear how you do it. 3 seconds of silence. Then Chase laughed. Sharp, like breaking glass. You want me to audition for you? No, sir. I just want to see if you can actually hit the note. The theater erupted. Gasps. Scattered, nervous laughs. Someone in the front row said, "Oh my God," loud enough for the microphones to catch. Chase's face flushed red. Of course I can hit the note. I've been hitting it for 15 years. Then show me. What happened next will shock you. Chase's mouth opened, closed. His hand flexed at his side. Fine, he said through his teeth. You want a demonstration? He turned to his sound engineer. Kill the backing track, all of it. The engineer hesitated, hand hovering over the board. Do it, Chase snapped. Chase. The engineer pressed a button. The music thinned immediately. Exposed. All the layers that had been filling the space suddenly gone, leaving just the raw instrumental. Chase raised his microphone and began to sing. His voice filled the theater, strong at first. Confident. He moved through the verse with ease, his years of training evident in every controlled breath, every smooth transition. The audience relaxed slightly. Maybe this was just a misunderstanding. Maybe the kid was wrong. Then he reached the bridge. The melody climbed. E4, G4, B4. Chase's voice followed, still solid, still controlled. But as the notes pushed higher, something changed. His neck tensed. His shoulders rose slightly, betraying the strain that his voice was trying to hide. D5, E5, A5. And then he reached for the C6. His voice cracked. It broke somewhere around A-sharp, a full step and a half below the target. The sound splintered like glass hitting concrete. Wrong in a way that made people wince. He stopped abruptly, coughed, tried to cover it with a laugh. Sorry, folks, dry throat. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. That's why we use the track, to protect the voice during long shows. But Zara had heard enough, and so had everyone else. You didn't hit it, she said quietly. Chase turned to her, his smile now a thin line. I told you. My voice is tired. But on your album you hit that note 27 times, Zara said. Her voice was growing stronger now, fueled by something she didn't fully understand yet. Anger, maybe. Or justice. I counted. And in every live video online, you hit it perfectly every single time. The audience shifted. Phones came out. People started looking at each other. That specific look that means everything is about to change. What are you trying to say? Chase's voice had an edge now, the smooth veneer cracking like old paint. I have perfect pitch, Zara said. I can hear frequencies. The note on your album, it's 1046.5 hertz. That's C6. But what you just sang was 932 hertz. That's A-sharp 5. Someone in the audience whispered, Is she right? Chase's face reddened. Listen, little girl. And the voice on the album, Zara continued, her words tumbling out now, unstoppable. It doesn't sound like you. It's a woman's voice. I looked up your album credits last night. It says, Sophia Mitchell, additional vocals. The theater exploded in whispers. Chase stepped toward her, no longer smiling. You need to stop talking right now. Why? Zara asked, and for the first time since she'd been dragged onto that stage, she felt something other than fear. Because I'm telling the truth? Because you're 11 years old and you don't know what you're talking about. I know what I heard at soundcheck. I know what I'm hearing now. Zara looked out at the audience, at the cameras, at the 2 million people watching. That note isn't yours. You've been lip-syncing it for 15 years. This is when everything changed. Chase's hand shot out and grabbed her arm. Not hard enough to hurt, but hard enough to control. We're done here. But before he could pull her off stage, a voice came from the wings. Actually, she's right. Everyone turned. A man stepped into the light. Mid-30s, white, wearing all black with a headset around his neck. Chase's sound engineer. The one who'd been running the board all night. His face was pale but determined, like someone who'd made a decision they couldn't take back. I've been your engineer for 5 years, Chase. His voice carried across the silent theater. Every single show, I've played that backing track. You've never sung that note live. Not once. The theater went completely silent. Not the kind of silence that's waiting to be broken, the kind that feels like the world stopped spinning. Chase's grip on Zara's arm loosened. He stared at his engineer like the man had just driven a knife into his back. You're fired, Chase whispered. I know, the engineer said, but she's 11 years old, and she's braver than I've been for 5 years. Mini cliffhanger. The silence in the theater was absolute. 500 people held their breath. 2 million people watched online, fingers hovering over share buttons. Chase Hendricks stood frozen, his carefully constructed empire crumbling in real time. This is ridiculous, Chase said, his voice shaking. You're going to believe some kid over me? I have 2 Grammys. I've sold 4 million albums. Then prove her wrong, someone shouted from the audience. Sing the note. Chase's face went from red to white. I just did. No, you didn't. You cracked. We all heard it. The crowd was turning. You could feel it in the air, that shift when public opinion moves from one side to another, when the story everyone believed starts to feel like a lie. Chase looked at Zara, standing there in her discount store blouse, and something ugly twisted in his chest. Pride, maybe, or fear disguised as rage. Fine, he said. You think you're so smart? You sing it, right now. No preparation, no warm-up, no second chances? Zara's hands trembled. This was the moment where she either proved herself or became exactly what Chase said she was. A nobody from Compton who didn't know her place. Ms. Johnson's voice carried from the choir section. You can do this, baby. Sing like you do at church. Zara closed her eyes, took a breath, felt the air fill her lungs, felt her diaphragm expand, felt every lesson she'd learned in that small Baptist church settle into her bones like muscle memory. She opened her eyes and nodded to the band. They started again, the intro to Higher Ground for the second time that night. But everything was different now. Zara began to sing. Her voice started soft, almost tentative. The first verse was low, comfortable, well within her range. She focused on the words, on the story the song was telling. Some people in the audience exchanged glances. She was good, sure, but nothing special yet. Then she reached the pre-chorus. Her voice opened up, gaining power without losing control. There was something raw and honest in her tone that hadn't been there in Chase's polished performance. She wasn't performing, she was testifying. The verse climbed higher. D5, E5, F5. Her voice followed effortlessly, each note pure and clear. No strain visible on her face, no tension in her shoulders, just breath and sound and truth. Chase shifted his weight. His jaw tightened. The bridge approached. This was where he'd failed. Zara didn't hesitate. She shifted registers smoothly, moving from chest voice to head voice without a break. G5, A5, B5. The audience sat up straighter, and then she reached for the C6. It came out clean, no crack, no strain, no trick. No, just a pure, sustained whistle register note that rang through the theater like a bell in a cathedral. Clear, perfect, impossible. She held it for 4 seconds. The sound was crystalline, cutting through the air with the kind of precision that makes people forget to breathe. Someone in the front row gasped, but Zara wasn't done. She took the note higher. D6, E6, F6 into territory that Chase's backing track had never even attempted. Her face was calm, almost serene, as she explored the upper reaches of her range with the confidence of someone who'd lived there her whole life. Then she brought it back down. F6 to C6 to A5 to F5, each transition seamless, each note a small miracle that shouldn't exist, but did. She finished the bridge and moved into the final chorus, her voice now fully open, no longer hiding, no longer afraid. When she sang the last word and let it fade into silence, nobody moved. Then the theater erupted. 500 people on their feet, screaming, applauding, some with tears streaming down their faces. The Jefferson Elementary Choir was jumping, hugging each other. Ms. Johnson had both hands over her mouth. The online stream exploded. Within 30 seconds, 50,000 people had shared the video. Within a minute, Zara Williams was trending worldwide. Zara stood in the spotlight, breathing hard, not quite believing what had just happened. Chase Hendricks looked like he'd been struck by lightning. His face had gone gray. All the color drained out like someone had pulled a plug. Yolanda Carter, a legendary R&B singer sitting as a judge in the front row, stood up. She was crying. "That," Yolanda said, her voice thick with emotion, "is the best thing I've heard from an 11-year-old in my entire career." She looked at Zara. "Baby, you didn't just hit that note. You owned it." The applause grew louder. Marcus Webb, another judge, a black music producer who'd worked with Alicia Keys and Kendrick Lamar, was shaking his head in disbelief. "I need to say something." He stood up. "I've been in this industry for 30 years, and what we just witnessed was an 11-year-old child singing a note that the man who made it famous can't actually hit." The audience went quiet, the weight of his words settling over them like snow. Marcus turned to the crowd. "That album track? Higher Ground? I mixed it. I was there in the studio." He paused. "And Zara's right. That's not Chase's voice. That's Sophia Mitchell. She's a session singer in Atlanta. She was paid $2,000 and asked to sign an NDA. She never got proper credit." The truth they buried for 15 years. Chase tried to speak, but no sound came out. His mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. "I stayed quiet because that's what you do in this industry," Marcus continued, his voice heavy. "You protect the star. You protect the money. But I'm done protecting lies, especially when an 11-year-old has more courage than I've had in 3 decades. The theater exploded again. Journalists typing furiously. Audience members shouting questions. Cameras abandoning their fixed positions, pushing forward for better shots. Chase finally found his voice. "This is insane. You're going to destroy my career over a backing track? Everyone uses them. Beyoncé uses tracks." "But they don't claim they're singing live," Yolanda shot back. "They don't sell tickets to live performances and then lip sync. That's fraud, Chase." I didn't," Chase sputtered, looking around for support. But his band members were looking away. His manager was on his phone, probably calling lawyers. His world was ending in real time, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Chase turned to Zara, and for a moment she saw something in his eyes that made her step back. Rage, yes, but also fear, the kind that comes when someone realizes they've lost everything, and there's no way back. You're going to regret this, he said quietly, just loud enough for her microphone to catch. You and your little school and your nobody teacher. I will make sure you never work in this industry. Do you understand me? Never. The threat hung in the air, caught by every camera, recorded for posterity. Ms. Johnson started to rise from her seat, but Zara spoke first. I'm 11 years old, she said, her voice steady. I don't work in the industry. I just sing because I love it. She paused. And you can't take that away from me. She looked at him. This man who'd tried to humiliate her, who'd threatened her, who'd built his entire career on a lie. But maybe someone should take it away from you. The theater went silent. Then someone started a slow clap. Then another. Within seconds, 500 people were applauding, not for Chase Hendricks, but for a child who'd refused to lie. Chase looked around at the cameras, at the ruins of everything he'd built. Then he walked off stage. The moment his foot hit the wings, the theater erupted again. People were on their phones. The live stream chat was moving too fast to read. Someone shouted, "Check Twitter, he's already trending." Not Martwuxer Zara Williams anymore. Chase Hendricks exposed. Chase Hendricks fraud. Chase Hendricks is over. Within 5 minutes, his Wikipedia page had been edited. Within 10, major music blogs were posting articles with headlines like, "Famous singer exposed by 11-year-old." Within 15, 3 of his sponsors had issued statements saying they were reviewing their relationship with him. Zara stood on that stage, surrounded by chaos she'd created simply by telling the truth, and felt something she'd never felt before. Not pride, exactly. Not triumph. Just the quiet certainty that she'd done the right thing. Even though she had no idea what would come next, what she didn't know was that the fight had only just begun. The chaos lasted 20 minutes before security cleared the theater. Zara sat backstage in a folding chair, Ms. Johnson's arm around her shoulders, watching adults argue in urgent whispers, event organizers, Chase's management team, people in expensive suits talking into phones with voices that carried the weight of money and power. Nobody was talking to her. She was the center of everything and invisible at the same time. Her mother had called 3 times from the hospital. Couldn't leave her shift. They'd fire her if she did, and they needed that $30,000 a year more than ever now. "Baby, what happened? Are you okay?" Zara didn't know how to answer. What had happened was that she'd destroyed a famous man's career in 3 minutes. Whether she was okay was unclear. "I'm fine, Mama. Ms. Johnson is here." That had been an hour ago. Now it was nearly midnight. The other choir kids had gone home. The theater was empty except for crew breaking down equipment. Zara was still sitting in that folding chair, waiting for someone to tell her what happened next. That's when Chase's lawyer arrived. He was a white man in his 50s, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Zara's mother made in 6 months. He carried a leather briefcase and had a smile that didn't reach his eyes. The kind of smile that rich people use when they're about to take something from you. "Miss Williams," he said, pulling up a chair. "I'm Robert Kraft. I represent Mr. Hendricks." Ms. Johnson's arm tightened around Zara's shoulders. "She's 11 years old. If you want to talk to her, her mother needs to be present." "Of course. I'm not here to interrogate anyone." Kraft's smile didn't waver. "I'm here to resolve this unfortunate misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding," Ms. Johnson said, her voice cold. "Your client can't sing the notes he's famous for. That's fraud." Kraft's smile didn't waver. "The music industry is complex, Ms. Johnson. Artists use vocal support, backing tracks, studio enhancement. It's standard practice. What happened tonight was a young girl making serious accusations without understanding the professional context." "I understand that he lied," Zara said quietly. Kraft turned to her. "No, sweetheart. You misunderstood. And unfortunately, that misunderstanding has caused Mr. Hendricks significant harm." He paused. "His sponsors are threatening to pull out. His tour dates are in jeopardy. We're talking about millions of dollars in damages." The word damages hung in the air like a threat. "Are you threatening to sue an 11-year-old? Ms. Johnson's voice was ice. "Not at all. We're hoping to avoid legal action entirely, which is why I'm here with a solution." He opened his briefcase, pulled out a document, slid it across to Ms. Johnson. "If Zara signs this, we can all move forward." Ms. Johnson took the paper. Her face grew darker with each line she read. "This says she made false accusations, that she apologizes, that she was seeking attention." "It's a mutual agreement," Kraft said smoothly. "In exchange, Mr. Hendricks will not pursue legal action, and as a gesture of goodwill, he'll personally fund a music scholarship for Zara. $50,000. Full ride to any program she wants." Zara's breath caught. $50,000. That was Berkeley. That was Juilliard. That was everything she'd dreamed of but never thought she could have. "And if she doesn't sign?" Ms. Johnson asked. Kraft's smile faded. "Then Mr. Hendricks will pursue defamation charges against Zara, against Jefferson Elementary, against you, Ms. Johnson, for failing to supervise a minor in your care." He paused, letting that sink in. "The school district has been notified that Mr. Hendricks's donation, $500,000 for your music program, is now in jeopardy." Ms. Johnson's hand trembled on Zara's shoulder. "So, let me be clear," Kraft continued. "Sign this. Accept the scholarship. Everyone moves on. Or refuse, and watch your school lose funding while your family drowns in legal fees they can't afford." He looked at Zara. "What happens next is up to you, young lady." Zara stared at the document, at the words that would call her a liar, at the signature line that would erase everything that had just happened. She thought about her mother working double shifts at County General, about her brothers who needed shoes, about the kids at Jefferson Elementary who'd lose music classes because of her. She thought about the truth. "No," she said. Kraft blinked. "Excuse me? I'm not signing that. I didn't lie. He did. And I'm not going to say I lied just because he's rich and I'm not. Young lady, I don't think you understand the consequences. I understand you're trying to scare me." Zara stood up. Even at less than 5 feet tall, even with shaking hands, she looked him in the eye. "Sue me if you want, but I'm not signing that paper." Kraft's face hardened. "Then we'll see you in court." He gathered his briefcase. At the door, he turned back. "By tomorrow morning, there will be stories about you, about your family, private things, painful things." He paused. "And when it gets bad, and it will, remember you chose this." Then he was gone. Ms. Johnson pulled Zara close. "Baby, are you sure? That scholarship?" "I don't want his money," Zara whispered. But as they walked out into the cold Los Angeles night, Zara couldn't stop shaking. She'd just refused $50,000 and threatened her school's funding. She'd made an enemy of one of the most powerful men in music, and she had no idea if telling the truth had been worth what it was about to cost. That was her second mistake. Zara woke up to her phone buzzing like angry bees. 6 in the morning, 3 hours of sleep. Her mother sat at their tiny kitchen table, laptop open, face pale in the blue light. "Mama? Baby, don't go online today. Don't look at—" But Zara had already picked up her phone. The screen was full of notifications. Thousands of them. She opened Twitter. The first thing she saw was a photo of their apartment building, the peeling paint visible, the broken security gate, trash bins overflowing in the alley. The caption, "This is where Zara Williams lives. While she accuses Chase Hendricks of fraud, she's clearly desperate for a way out of poverty." Her hands went numb. The next post was her mother's work schedule, somehow obtained, posted for the world to see. Her mother barely makes $30,000 a year. Of course the daughter is looking for a payday. Then photos from school yearbooks. Someone had circled the free lunch stamp on her cafeteria tray. Government assistance her whole life. This was never about the truth. It's about money. The comments were brutal. Ungrateful kid. She should be thanking Chase for giving her a platform. This is what happens when you give these people opportunities. They bite the hand that feeds them. These people. Her phone buzzed with texts from unknown numbers, threats, slurs, words that made her feel small and afraid and alone. Ms. Johnson called. Don't come to school. The principal wants to meet. There are reporters outside. Reporters? Because of you. Ms. Johnson's voice was tight, not angry, scared. Zara felt like she was drowning. But then, at 7:15 a.m., something changed. A woman named Sophia Mitchell posted a video. She was in her 30s, black, sitting in a recording studio with gold records behind her on the wall. Professional, credible, real. My name is Sophia Mitchell. I'm a session singer, and I'm the voice Chase Hendricks has been selling as his own for 15 years. Zara's mother grabbed her hand. That little girl told the truth last night. I sang the whistle register notes on Higher Ground and 4 other songs on Chase's albums. I was paid $2,000 per song and asked to sign an NDA. Sophia held up a document. The camera zoomed in, contract details visible. This is my contract. This is proof. And I'm done staying silent while a child gets attacked for exposing what I was too afraid to expose myself. The video had been posted 8 minutes ago. Already 50,000 views. Within an hour, 2 million. Within 3 hours, 7 more session singers came forward, each with contracts, each with recordings, each confirming what Zara had said. By noon, the narrative had flipped. Chase Hendricks Exposed was trending with proof, not speculation. Zara sat on her worn couch, watching the internet tear apart the man who'd tried to destroy her. She wasn't alone anymore. But Chase Hendricks wasn't going down quietly. By that afternoon, his legal team had filed a $10 million defamation lawsuit. Not just against Zara, against Sophia Mitchell, against Marcus Webb, the producer who'd spoken up at the gala, against Jefferson Elementary School for allowing a minor to make false public accusations. $10 million. Zara's mother stared at the legal document that had been hand-delivered to their apartment at 3 p.m. Her hands shook so badly she could barely hold the paper. "We don't have money for a lawyer," she whispered. "We don't have money for anything." The lawsuit was strategic, designed not to win but to terrify. Chase's team knew that even if they lost, the legal fees alone would bankrupt everyone involved. It was a weapon, and they were wielding it with precision. But the counterattack went deeper than lawsuits. By 4 p.m., gossip sites were running coordinated stories. Sources close to the Williams family claimed that Zara's mother had pushed her daughter to confront Chase, that the whole thing had been planned to extort money. One article included quotes from former neighbors saying the family was known for playing victim and looking for handouts. None of it was true, all of it was published. By 5 p.m., Zara's school was under siege. Not just reporters now, but angry Chase Hendricks fans. Teenagers and adults standing outside Jefferson Elementary with signs. Liars. Frauds. Leave Chase alone. The principal called an emergency meeting. Zara and her mother sat across from him in his office. He looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. "I'm sorry," he said, "but the school board is considering suspending Zara pending investigation." "Investigation of what?" Zara's mother demanded. "She told the truth. You saw the video. Everyone saw it." The board is concerned about the attention, the threats. We've had to increase security. Parents are calling, worried about their children's safety." He rubbed his face. "And Chase Hendricks's lawyers are threatening to sue the district for negligence. They're saying we failed to supervise Zara, that we allowed her to defame their client on school time." "She wasn't on school time," Ms. Johnson interjected from the corner where she'd been standing. "She was at an evening event." "It was a school-sanctioned event," the principal said. "The choir was there representing Jefferson Elementary, which means legally we're liable." Zara felt her chest tighten. "So I'm being suspended because I told the truth?" "You're being suspended because the school can't afford to fight a lawsuit from Chase Hendricks's legal team." The principal's voice was heavy with regret, but the words still landed like stones. "I'm sorry, Zara. I truly am. But the board meets tomorrow, and I don't think I can protect you." They left the school through a back entrance to avoid the cameras. At home, the apartment phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters, threats, someone claiming to be from Child Protective Services, saying they'd received reports that Zara's mother was exploiting her child. It was fake. CPS didn't work like that, but it was effective. Every call was a small knife. Zara's brothers were scared. They didn't understand why angry people were outside their building, why their sister was on TV, why everything felt like it was falling apart. That night, Zara's mother sat on the edge of her bed. Her eyes were red from crying. "Baby, I need to ask you something." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "If you could take it back, would you?" Zara thought about the question, about the $50,000 scholarship she'd refused, about the reporters outside their building, about her school suspending her, about the threats and the lies and the $10 million lawsuit that could destroy their lives. "No," she said finally. "I wouldn't take it back." Her mother closed her eyes. A tear slid down her cheek. "Then we fight." She took a shaky breath. "I don't know how, but we fight." But fighting seemed impossible when the enemy had unlimited money and unlimited reach. At midnight, Zara lay awake in the bed she shared with her brothers, listening to them breathe in their sleep. She thought about Chase Hendricks in his mansion somewhere in the Hollywood Hills, probably sleeping peacefully, protected by lawyers and money, and the knowledge that the system was built to protect people like him. She thought about how easy it would be to give up, to sign the paper his lawyer had offered, to say she was sorry for telling the truth. And then she thought about Sophia Mitchell, who'd been silent for 15 years before finding the courage to speak. About Marcus Webb, who'd stayed quiet for 3 decades before standing up. About the 7 other session singers who'd come forward, risking their own careers. They'd all been afraid, but they'd spoken anyway. Because someone had to, even if that someone was just an 11-year-old girl who refused to lie. Zara closed her eyes and tried to sleep, knowing tomorrow would be worse, not knowing that tomorrow would bring something she never expected. Help. The knock came at 7 a.m. Zara's mother answered cautiously, expecting reporters. Instead, she found a woman in her 40s, professionally dressed, carrying a briefcase. "Mrs. Williams, my name is Diana Carter. I'm an entertainment attorney. I'd like to represent your daughter. Pro bono." Zara's mother blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "No charge. Sophia Mitchell hired our firm to defend her. When we heard Chase sued an 11-year-old child, 3 partners volunteered to take Zara's case." She smiled. "May I come in?" Within an hour, their kitchen table was covered with documents. Diana worked quickly, pen moving across legal pads, turning what seemed impossible into strategy. "Chase's lawsuit is garbage," she said bluntly. "Defamation requires false statements, Everything Zara said was true. He won't win. But he knows that, Zara's mother said. This is intimidation, not litigation. Exactly. So what do we do? Diana looked up. We countersue. Fraud, false advertising, breach of contract with ticket holders. We make it a class action, make it too expensive for him to continue. A second knock interrupted them. Ms. Johnson entered, followed by Marcus Webb, the producer who'd exposed Chase on stage. I wanted to check on her, Marcus said. He sat across from Zara. Up close, she could see exhaustion in his face. Chase's lawyers had gone after him too. I've been in this industry 30 years, Marcus said. I've watched powerful people crush careers with lawsuits and threats and money, but I've also watched movements start. He pulled out his phone. Look at this. Believe Zara was trending, exploding. Alicia Keys had tweeted, "Protect that child, listen to her truth." John Legend announced he was covering legal fees if needed. Kelly Clarkson, Fantasia, Jennifer Hudson, all speaking up. You're not alone, Marcus said. The third knock came at 9 a.m., Rachel Goldstein from 60 Minutes. I'd like to do a story, Rachel said. An investigation. Chase's career, his pattern of credit theft, the industry that protected him. I want to tell the whole story. Why? Zara's mother asked suspiciously. Because I have a daughter your age, Rachel said quietly. And if someone tried to silence her for telling the truth, I'd want someone to help. By noon, the apartment was full. Diana's paralegal had arrived with documents. 2 of Sophia's industry contacts offered statements. Ms. Johnson was coordinating with Jefferson Elementary teachers who wanted to support Zara publicly. Then Sophia Mitchell herself arrived. She wasn't what Zara expected. In videos, Sophia looked polished, professional, untouchable. In person, she looked tired, human, scared. She sat next to Zara and took her hand. I was 23 when I signed that NDA, Sophia said. I needed the money. I needed the credit. And when they buried my name where nobody would see it, I told myself it was fine. Just business. She paused. I told myself that lie for 15 years, until I watched an 11-year-old refuse to lie at all. I'm scared, Zara admitted. Me too, Sophia said. But we're scared together now. That's different. By evening, the narrative was shifting, not just on social media, but in major outlets. The New York Times. Session singer speaks out, the hidden voices behind pop music. Rolling Stone was preparing an exposé on Chase's entire catalog. Billboard was investigating how many other artists had similar arrangements. The story had grown beyond Zara. It was about people whose work was stolen, whose talent was used and discarded, whose names were erased so others could shine. Jefferson Elementary's principal called. The school board had voted. Zara wasn't being suspended. Instead, they were declining Chase's donation and issuing a public statement supporting Zara's right to speak truth. We don't want money from someone who attacks children, the principal said. That night, a GoFundMe appeared. Not from Zara's family, from parents at Jefferson Elementary, from community members, from strangers who'd seen the videos. The goal was $50,000 to replace Chase's donation. It raised $300,000 in 6 hours. Zara sat on her couch watching donations scroll past, reading messages from people she'd never met. Teachers, musicians, parents, kids her age who said she'd inspired them. Her mother read from her phone, voice thick with emotion. I'm a session musician in Nashville. I've had my work stolen for 20 years. Watching Zara gave me courage to demand proper credit. Thank you, brave girl. Marcus had been right. This was bigger than one lawsuit, one career, one scared child. This was a movement. And Zara Williams, 11 years old, 4'7", was at its center. Not because she'd wanted attention or money or fame, but because she'd done the simplest, hardest thing in the world. She'd refused to lie. The courtroom was smaller than Zara had imagined. Los Angeles Superior Court, Department 23. Wood-paneled walls and fluorescent lights that hummed. 30 people filled the gallery. Reporters mostly, and supporters who'd lined up at dawn. Chase Hendricks sat at the plaintiff's table with 5 lawyers in expensive suits. He wore a navy blazer and an expression of wounded dignity. The victim, not the villain. Zara sat at the defense table between her mother and Diana Carter. Her legs dangled from the chair, not quite reaching the floor. She wore the same white blouse from the gala, the nicest thing she owned. This wasn't the full trial. This was a preliminary hearing on Chase's motion for an injunction to stop Zara, Sophia, and Marcus from making more defamatory statements. Judge Patricia Moreno entered. Latina woman, 60s, 20 years on the bench. She looked at Chase's team, then at Zara, and something flickered across her face. "Mr. Kraft," she said to Chase's attorney, "you're seeking an injunction against an 11-year-old child." "Your Honor, the defendant's age doesn't negate the harm caused by her false statements." "Were they false?" Judge Moreno interrupted. "That's what—" "The statements were made with malicious intent to destroy my client's reputation, and the statements were made in response to your client publicly humiliating her on stage." Diana Carter stood. "Your Honor, if I may." Judge Moreno nodded. Diana approached with a tablet. "I'd like to enter footage from the charity gala, unedited." The courtroom watched Chase drag Zara onto stage, watched him whisper, "Don't embarrass yourself, kid," into a live microphone, watched him fail to hit the note. When it ended, silence. "Your Honor," Diana continued, "the plaintiff didn't summon this child because she lied. He summoned her because she told the truth, and it cost him money. That's not defamation. That's consequence." Judge Moreno turned to Kraft. "Do you have evidence that Miss Williams' statements were false?" "Your Honor, the music industry commonly uses vocal enhancement. That's standard." "That's not what I asked. Did she lie? Yes or no?" Kraft shifted. "The characterization of my client's use of standard industry practices as fraud is defamatory in—" "Yes or no, Counselor?" Silence stretched. "We believe the context was misleading," Kraft finally said. "So no." Judge Moreno made a note. "Ms. Carter, do you have evidence supporting Miss Williams's claims?" "Yes. I'd like to call Sophia Mitchell." Sophia took the stand. Was sworn in. Diana walked her through it, the contracts, the NDAs, the recordings proving her voice was on Chase's albums, the emails explicitly instructing her never to claim credit. "Miss Mitchell," Diana asked, "when you heard Zara Williams say Chase Hendricks couldn't sing those notes, what did you think?" "I thought, finally, someone said it out loud." "And was she correct?" "Yes. Completely." Diana sat. Kraft stood for cross-examination, but Judge Moreno held up her hand. "I've heard enough." She looked at Chase directly. "Mr. Hendricks, I'm going to ask you something. You're under oath, even not on the stand. Can you right now in this courtroom sing the note in question?" Chase's face went pale. "Your Honor, I don't see how that's relevant." "It's extremely relevant. You're asking this court to silence people who say you can't hit a note. Prove them wrong. Sing it." The courtroom held its breath. Chase looked at his lawyers, at the judge, at Zara. My voice isn't warmed up. I can't just perform on demand." "You performed on demand for 15 years, Judge Moreno said. "You sold tickets to live performances. Surely you can demonstrate it once." Chase's mouth opened, closed. No sound came out. "That's what I thought." Judge Moreno picked up her gavel. The motion for injunction is denied. Furthermore, I'm sanctioning the plaintiff for bringing a frivolous suit intended to silence truthful speech." She looked at Zara. "Miss Williams, you're free to continue telling your story. That's called the First Amendment. It protects truth, even when truth is inconvenient." The gavel came down. The gallery erupted. Reporters rushed for exits. Camera flashes went off. Chase Hendricks sat frozen. His lawyers were already packing briefcases. Zara felt her mother's arms around her, felt Ms. Johnson's hand on her shoulder, heard Sophia crying with relief. Outside the courtroom, Rachel Goldstein waited with her 60 Minutes crew. "Zara, how do you feel?" "I feel like I can breathe again." That night, the 60 Minutes episode aired. 18 million people watched Rachel's investigation. They saw contracts with session singers. They saw frequency analysis proving the voice wasn't Chase's. They saw musicians who'd been silenced by NDAs for decades. They saw Chase, defensive and angry, claiming victim status, refusing to sing the note when Rachel asked. And they saw Zara, 11 years old, in her small apartment, explaining what perfect pitch was, how she'd known, why she'd spoken. "I wasn't trying to hurt him," she said to the camera. "I was just telling the truth. I didn't know the truth could be so dangerous." By the time the credits rolled, Chase's remaining sponsors had withdrawn. His label dropped him. Vegas residency canceled. The Grammy committee announced they were reviewing his awards. His career, built on stolen voices and protected lies, was over. Ended by a child who'd simply refused to stay quiet. Comment where you're listening from. Subscribe to channel, Sorens worden twerken. 3 months later, Chase Hendricks filed for bankruptcy. The class action lawsuit settled. 15,000 ticket holders received refunds totaling $23 million. His mansion went up for sale, his car collection, recording studio, music rights, all liquidated to pay debts. Both Grammy Awards were officially revoked. The Recording Academy cited fraudulent representation of vocal performance. First time in Grammy history, Chase attempted a comeback tour 6 months later. Unplugged and unfiltered. Promising everything live. Complete transparency. 8 dates in small venues. He sold 11% of tickets. The reviews were brutal. Hendrix's voice, exposed without studio magic, reveals an unremarkable tenor with limited range. The Emperor has no clothes. After the 3rd show, he canceled the rest. Last anyone heard, he was teaching music business ethics at an online for-profit college, making promotional videos nobody watched. But this story isn't about Chase's fall. It's about what rose. Zara Williams received 5 major label offers. Her mother declined them all. She's 11 years old. She needs to be a child first. Instead, Zara signed with an independent label owned by Black musicians. The contract was unusual. No albums required until 16. Creative control guaranteed. Ownership of her masters. And 15% of all earnings went to a fund she created. Unbreakable Voices. The fund provided scholarships for young singers from underprivileged backgrounds, free vocal training, music theory, and legal education about contracts and rights. 50 scholarships the first year, 200 by year 3. Zara recorded 1 single, My Own Voice. She wrote it with Sophia Mitchell about finding courage, speaking truth, saying no when everyone expects silence. It went gold in 6 weeks. The video featured Zara singing in her church, her school, her apartment, places where her real voice was born. At the end, 50 scholarship recipients joined her. Every race, every background, all credited, all seen. The industry changed. California passed Assembly Bill 2847. Zara's Law required disclosure when live performances used pre-recorded vocals. Tickets had to state it. Violation was consumer fraud. 12 states adopted similar laws within 18 months. The Recording Academy overhauled credit requirements. All submissions needed detailed documentation of every vocalist. Additional vocals was no longer acceptable. You had to name them. Spotify and Apple Music added credits tabs to every song. Session musicians, invisible for decades, suddenly had names attached to their work. A session musicians' union formed. 2,000 members in the first year. They negotiated minimum standards, proper credit, royalty participation, legal protection. 47 artists voluntarily updated liner notes, acknowledging previously uncredited session singers. Transparency became the new currency. Sophia Mitchell's career exploded. She'd been in the shadows 15 years. Now, magazine covers, her own album, a Grammy, for real this time. In her acceptance speech, she thanked Zara. "I was too afraid to speak for 15 years. This 11-year-old showed me what courage looks like. This award belongs to both of us." Marcus Webb started a production company dedicated to properly crediting new talent. "I'm done protecting frauds. I'm protecting the truth now." Jefferson Elementary's music program became the best funded in the district. $800,000 from GoFundMe. 2 new teachers. Instruments for everyone. Scholarships named after Ms. Johnson. Ms. Johnson received offers from prestigious schools. She turned them down. "My kids are here. I'm staying." 1 year after the gala, Zara performed at the Grammy Awards. 12 now, still in regular school, still sharing a bedroom, still singing in church. She stood on that stage in a simple dress. No elaborate production. Just her voice and piano, played by Sophia. She sang "My Own Voice." When she hit the final note, a sustained C6 that rang clear through the Staples Center, 18,000 people rose to their feet. Not because it was impossible, because it was honest. Remember that moment when Chase Hendricks pointed at a small black girl in a cheap uniform and dragged her onto a stage, expecting her to crumble? When he whispered, "Don't embarrass yourself," into a live microphone, thinking nobody would care? He thought he was teaching her about knowing her place. He didn't know she was about to teach the world about truth. 18 months later, Zara Williams is 13, still in that apartment in Compton, still shares a bedroom with her brothers, still takes the bus. But everything changed. Session singers who'd been invisible for decades now have their names in lights. Young artists have legal protection. Audiences demand transparency. And across the country, kids are singing unafraid because they watched an 11-year-old refuse to shrink. Zara didn't just hit a note Chase Hendricks couldn't reach. She hit a note the entire industry couldn't ignore. The note that says, "Your truth matters more than their comfort." The note that says, "Being small doesn't mean being silent." Chase thought he could destroy her with threats and lawsuits and money. He learned what every bully learns eventually. You can't silence someone who's decided their voice matters. Today, Chase teaches online classes nobody remembers. Awards revoked, mansions sold, legacy a cautionary tale. And Zara? Still just a kid who loves to sing, who does homework and argues with her brothers, who sometimes forgets she changed an industry. That's real courage. It doesn't need an announcement or spotlight or millions of dollars. Sometimes it sounds like a 12-year-old saying no when everyone expects her to fold. So here's the question. If you were there, would you have stood up for Zara when the lawyers came? When the threats started? When everyone said stay quiet? Or would you have stayed seated, relieved it wasn't you? Drop your honest answer below. We all think we'd be heroes. But courage is harder than we imagine. And if you've ever been told to stay small, to know your place, to accept the lie. Share your story. Zara's voice was just the beginning. Yours matters too. Go back to minute 14. Watch Chase's lawyer realize he's losing. Watch his face when the judge asks Chase to sing. There's a micro-expression. Pure panic. 0.8 seconds. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. If this story reminded you why truth matters, share it. If it made you think about your own voice, subscribe. The world doesn't need more people who stay silent to stay safe. It needs more Zaras. Maybe that's you. Share this story, not the sanitized version, the real version. Because when you silence one voice for speaking truth, you teach 1,000 others to stay quiet. But when you protect one voice for speaking truth, you teach 1,000 others to speak. Subscribe to Channel. Your truth is your power. Stay just. Stay loud. Stay free.